What's up, my man? Hey, nice t-shirt.
Yeah, it's part of our merch collection. Do you like it?
I do like it.
Yeah. I'm going to send you a hat. It's February 2022, and this is the Pilote Podcast with David Fuller and Cory Smith. I know you're into your baseball cap. We do have Pilote.
I don't know did you notice that? So when I worked in person before the pandemic, I have about 25 pairs of Chuck Taylors of different colors. So when I go to business meetings, I always wear.
I don't know what that is. Is that tie?
Converse, like those Converse sneakers.
Yeah, right.
So every time I go to a business meeting, I wear like a suit, like I wear jeans, but I wear like a jacket and a dress shirt. But I always wear a different color sneakers, like purple or red, but you can't do that on video. So now I got like 60 hats.
Right.
So every time I do a video call, I wear a different hat. And sometimes like I'll turn the video off and switch the hat to see if anybody's paying attention. And they do. They're like, did you just switch hats? I'm like, yeah, just wanted to see if anybody's paying attention.
I'll send you.
I'm weird.
I'll send you a Pilote hat, mate. You gotta have a Pilote hat.
You gotta do it, man. I'll wear it. I wear it in business meetings.
Well, since we're now on Apple, and we're now on every platform. We're on Amazon Music, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're on, you name it. You can find us now anywhere you get your podcast.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna have to get the links for all those. I have to go track them all down.
We'll put them in the show notes. But hey, if you're listening to this, you know where to get your podcast. So it's all good.
Right on, man. I am so ready for this week. You have inspired me, man. When we started putting out the topics for this week and you put the topic out for this week, boy, it set me on fire. Set me on fire.
This week, we need to talk about experience design.
Yeah, just experience in general.
And it's a bit misunderstood. It's been around for a long time, but the difference between user experience and customer experience and user interface and everything else. I know you've been working on this for a long time. So over to you, Mr. Cory Smith.
Oh, sure. I ended up working the last couple of weeks with a client, an auto manufacturer. And we talked a lot about experience, primarily the in-car experience, what they call IVI, the in-vehicle infotainment system, like your car radio, your GPS, your entertainment system, Apple CarPlay, Google CarPlay.
I'm just going to jump in and remind people that I haven't owned a car for 20 years. I do.
You have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, I do rent them though. I'm just going to put it out there. I can't talk to in-vehicle experiences because I don't have a car.
Well, it was just interesting. What sparked a conversation, not only with that client, but with some colleagues of mine. As you know, you and I both have worked in marketing in a way.
Right.
I worked for ad agencies for many years. After all these years, so kind of the term came into the professional existence, or at least into my consciousness professionally around, 2012 or 13, CX, customer experience, began to be talked about way back then. And it's been around for a while, and it's certainly matured. It's become, and once it comes into the consciousness of like Gartner, I feel like it's arrived, because if Gartner's talking about it, it's kind of already happened. And it's been around for so long. And, like coming from working at large corporations, I just recently worked for Aflac and we've worked in consulting, where I've worked with a lot of big brands and companies. Like, this is something that everybody's talking about. And I'm struggle with, it's such the forefront of so many companies and organizations dialogue, their strategy, their corporate strategy, their digital transformation strategy. But yet it seems to still be a mystery to everybody. Why are we unable to achieve a good experience? So like back to cars, and they're making obviously a concerted effort, a very deliberate effort to take a less engineering focused approach to the in-car experience, to not only their in-vehicle infotainment system, but to their entire instrument cluster, the entire experience. You see in these new cars, the dash just kind of extends across the instrument cluster into, and they have these big screens now, like you see in Teslas. where it's just like the dashboard extends into like a large iPad screen, and they're taking it a lot more seriously now, where they're actually doing UX research. They're wanting to work with companies that work in market in regions globally and go out and do research, do customer research in the field, do contextual inquiries, or ride along side by sides and get out there with customers and vehicles and learn how they drive, how they interact with the vehicle, and really understand what the experience should be. Which is interesting that it's 2022 going into the 23-24 model car year. So I think one of the things that I've realized is car manufacturers have also realized that the in-vehicle experience is also going to now become a differentiator for purchasing. And you got, new technologies, 5G's come along, so they're going to actually have real-time content delivery to your car. What does that mean to the experience? And friction and distraction, what does that mean for drivers? Even though we now have not completely autonomous vehicle, but you have some self-driving modes.
Right.
All of that is super interesting.
We've had cruise control for a long time, right?
Right. But it's interesting. But it's interesting to me that Tesla came out with the self-driving mode quite a few years ago. And even though they had like several horrifying crashes as a result of it, it still hasn't stopped the technology from marching forward.
Normally what has happened in the past is you have, I'm not a massive fan of wars or defense technology, but that is actually where a lot of the innovation has come from traditionally over the last 100 years. Somebody is flying a fighter jet and they wear a certain helmet and they have a certain control system, and then that moves into more consumer devices. And that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering, why does Tesla have a great big iPad in the middle of the console and not a heads-up display?
Yeah.
Look, I need to look away from the road onto a screen to do something. Why can't I do that by voice or by heads-up or by some other thing? And it does happen, right? Formula One has brought in paddles switching, for example. But if you look at a Formula One steering wheel today, there's 100 controls on that thing that the driver can do without looking away from the road and without putting their hands away from the wheel. And yet consumer cars are still doing things where I have to take my hand off the wheel and I have to put my hand somewhere else in order to control the entertainment system, or I need to change gears, or I need to whatever else.
100%. Or why can't it be voice control? We're not, like, at this stage in the game, we're all used to Siri or Google,
exactly,
or Alexa, right? Like, why can't we just call it out? I always wonder that too, because like I even get frustrated even with Apple CarPlay in my own car. It's like all the buttons. Do we need, like, what? I'm driving. Do I need so many buttons and controls? If you have apps on your phone, one of them is Audible. If you listen to audiobooks, Audible has a driving mode, and it's got like 4 buttons, like head, forward, skip. Like, just keep it simple. Like, for a discipline or a set of disciplines at this point, because you have CX, UX, UI, service design, product design. It's for something that's matured so far. Why have we not come further in some of these areas? And it doesn't even, like, I don't want to like focus on cars. It's other areas too.
I watched I know you love your documentaries. You said it a couple of weeks ago. Have you seen Downfall?
I just watched it yesterday.
Man, if you fly, it's a scary, scary program. So
yes, I'm glad I'm not getting on a plane.
Fill the listener in. This is about the Boeing 737 MAX incidents that happened a couple of years ago. There were a couple of crashes. There's some things that people don't necessarily understand unless they're in the industry. So the thing that really struck me about it was that Boeing, when they introduced this new plane, had said that there would be no requirement for pilots to do any retraining on a simulator, because retraining on a simulator would have cost a fortune. So what they did was they introduced a new system into the plane without telling the pilots that they'd introduced it.
Well, and then they installed the system into the plane. And then when they characterized it in the documentation of the plane, they obfuscated it.
I've been a product manager. I've been a product owner. I love product design. But there's these little things that people kind of don't really understand about the enormity of product design. Of, okay, if you move from version 3 to version 5, but you don't tell the consumer that there's going to be an enormous learning curve to move from one to the other, which is one of the reasons people don't switch between iOS and Android. So,
well, I think the other thing that was interesting about this Boeing, to your point, is that the 737 was a 30-year-old plane. So when they introduced this new model and they said, well, you don't need any new or retraining, it was accepted because it was a plane that kind of already existed.
But when you bring that back to everyday implementations of experience design, it might not cause death, but it causes serious annoyance and probably causes loss of revenue and everything else, just because people haven't done basic user acceptance tests. I kind of think, well, how did someone sign off on this? How did someone go through the user acceptance testing and say, this is the point of the funnel or the process or the experience where someone should be able to do X? And you know this better than I do because you work in the sort of agile methodology where you have a user case that says customers should be able to check out using Apple Pay. It gets implemented and they launch it and you try and do it with Apple Pay and it doesn't work. And you're like,
going to cause me to veer off.
How does this meet the user? How does this meet the user case? How did anyone sign off on this? It doesn't work.
For most people, for most organizations, the fail fast, fail forward is just a slogan and it's not an ethos. But that's for organizations that still rally around requirements are doomed to fail. Requirements are simply a mechanism or a shield for developers to hide behind when they don't deliver. Forcing people to develop business or technical requirements forces business people to think and talk like technical people, which they're just not qualified or capable to do. In truly agile, and when I say agile, I don't mean the methodology, I mean agile mindset or agile ways of working mindset. Organizations, we ask for business outcomes. What's your business intent? What are your desired business outcomes? And then you ask the business to talk to you in layman's terms. And so if you think about it in an agile methodology way, you ask them to give you epics, right? So it's like, what are you trying to, what's the business outcome? Well, we want people to be able to come to the website and pay with Apple Pay. That's a business outcome. That's a loose. And then it's our job as technical folks to go decompose that into stories and think about all the technical pieces that we have to do to deliver that, right?
But it's not for the business. And I get that, and I understand that. But what I don't understand is how some of this stuff still comes to market.
And how we were successful is doing like what we talked about before, going out and spending time with the customer in the field and understanding because a lot of times you get requirements from the business, right?
Right.
And those are not the users or the customer of the product.
And that's a really good point. There's a difference between a customer and a user.
That's right.
So there's a guy in procurement who's looking at a bunch of numbers and saying, well, I've had 6 proposals and this is the cheapest one and this is the most expensive one and this is the one that has the best brand recommendation and whatever else. They buy that based on an RFP, which has got a whole bunch of arbitrary things in it that
garbage in it.
Okay,
RFPs are the worst thing to happen to business.
I'm an edge case, right? But the thing is that if you solve the case for the edge cases, then everything else is easy.
Yes.
Right. So design for the hardest bit. I remember doing e-commerce a couple of years ago. There was a supermarket in Dubai, and they said, right, we'd never done e-commerce before. Most grocery stores, when they're doing e-commerce, will say, right, we'll start with the big box stuff. We'll start with detergent. But this supermarket decided to go the other way. They said, we're going to start with fresh fish because it goes off really quickly. It's it's got to be kept refrigerated. If you can do e-commerce for fresh fish,
you can do it for
you
anything.
Can do e-commerce for anything. In a couple of weeks, we've got a guest coming in, very special guest, who's a customer champion, who is going to talk about some amazing stuff around putting the customer first. So I don't want to steal his thunder. That's going to be a really interesting episode. This is a bit of a segue into our next story. So So this is all about storytelling. I'm going to tell a little story, right? So me and my brother grew up south of Melbourne in a place called the Mornington Peninsula. It's a lovely part of the world. It's got beaches, it's got creeks, it's got rivers. It's just, as a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, it was an awesome place to be a kid, right? So there's a few places where I grew up where there's these creeks and beaches that just run into the sea. And my brother and I used to play this game where we'd pick up a leaf, we'd pick up a blade of grass, and we would throw that into the creek, and they'd race. And the leaf would either get caught in the fastest moving part of the stream and rush into the sea, or would get caught in an eddy and just spin and not go anywhere, or get caught in a rock or whatever else. And I think customer experience is a lot like that, right? People come into your business from really different parts of the world. You know, they might come in via social media, they might come in via search, they might come in via the website, they might come in via a TV ad, they might be referred by a friend. So there's a whole bunch of tributaries that come into this river, which is the customer experience. And then there's a bit where you try and corral them to sort of get them to move in from the tributaries into the main river. And it's hopefully flows really quickly, and they get out to the sea where, you know, the end result is, and they buy your product and
Right.
and happy days. It's not just click on an add to cart, check out.
No, well, I would add to what you say is I would say the concept of experience is simple. And I think that organizations approach it as if it's some kind of voodoo black magic science. It's not. We're trying to produce a friction-free experience
Right.
for your customer with your brand. And that doesn't just mean your website, right? That doesn't just mean the way they experience you through your website. That means the way they experience you on the phone, the way they experience you in your store, the way they experience you through your tone and voice and messaging in your social media platforms. Just think about that.
So McDonald's, it's a really old brand, but why is McDonald's so successful? Consistency.
Yep.
That was what they did. They invented the brand experience, in the sense that you walk into a McDonald's, it doesn't matter whether it's in Bangkok in Thailand, or whether it's in Sydney, Australia, or whether it's in Atlanta, Georgia, or whether it's in Shenzhen in China, the experience is exactly the same. That was what McDonald's invented effectively.
Hey, but I couldn't think of a better segue to our next section than brand, consistency,
and storytelling. Right. So I'm going to
take it away. You can start this one.
Well, I put this one up. I put this one up but then I know that you have some strong feelings.
I'm warning you, I'm gonna run away with it eventually.
So imagine a magical fantasy land where you can escape your daily life, you can interact with characters from your favorite films, you can interact with magical beings, you can eat, shop, play, have an incredible experience. What does that sound like to you? To me, that sounds like the promise of the metaverse to me.
It does to me too.
But it also sounds like Disneyland.
It very much sounds like Disneyland. Yeah.
So here's my bold prediction. Last week we said that Meta perhaps could own the metaverse in an AOL style centralized branded metaverse, that not all metaverse would be this decentralized Web3 utopian dream, but there may be some other models. And so I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, okay, which company is best positioned to win this metaverse style thinking? So I'm thinking, okay, they need to understand how to build experiences.
Yeah.
They need to have IP. They need to know how to tell stories. They need to understand how IoT and technology and experiences mixes between digital and reality. They need to have some brand credibility and trust, so you feel safe, so you could bring your family and everything's that's cool. And I was thinking about those criteria. We're not going to go back to requirements, but basically, I was thinking about these criteria and saying, okay, if these are the user stories for a metaverse, which company is best positioned to deliver those? And a light bulb went off in my head, and I went, Disney.
It is Disney.
They got theme parks, they got cruises, they got Star Wars, they got Marvel, they've got storytelling, they've got IoT, they've got magic bands, they've got. You're the Disney expert, so I'm going to give it over to you.
I had not thought about this until you stated this, but I think this is a brilliant observation, and I think you're right. So here's what I think Disney will do. I think Disney, now again, they're not under the same astute leadership they were a year ago. Bob Iger, who I hold in high esteem, was a great CEO. I don't think Bob Chapek is a great CEO. Well, that remains to be seen. But I think that if Disney is smart, they'll kick back for a minute and wait to see who produces the best entree technology into the metaverse, right? I think that for all the reasons that you stated, they are uniquely poised to use your term, win the metaverse, because they have everything that it takes. Just for the same reason, they have everything that it takes to win the streaming wars, right? Like, they were late to the Disney Plus game, but they're, as you can see in their numbers, if you watch their annual reports, they're gaining ground rapidly on subscriber base in Disney Plus. It's only slowed because they're just slow to develop content for the platform, unique, original content. But they're blowing it up, and it's because they own Fox, they own ABC, they own National Geographic, Marvel, Lucasfilm, you name it. They have Pixar. Pixar. They have and Disney, of course. Let's not forget just the Disney catalog and films that they continue to produce. They have an endless well of IP and back catalog of stuff that they'll never stop producing. It's what they do well, is produce.
But I think the other thing is they know how to turn that into an experience.
Yes,
I've never been to Disneyland. I know you are a massive. Oh my gosh,
Disney, you've never been?
But I've never been.
Their parks and experiences is their largest revenue stream.
But then you add Marvel and you add Star Wars, and then you build experiences around that.
Yep.
Meta, Facebook doesn't have any of that. Right?
No,
they won't. If I've got a really stark choice, let's leave aside for now the decentralized utopian metaverse that the Web3 fanboys are talking about, and let's look at, if you were to spend your life in the metaverse or the Disney metaverse,
right?
I'm going to spend it in the Disney metaverse because I can hang out with Baby Yoda.
Right, right. An Iron Man.
The Disney Magic Band is never really talked about but it's an insanely cool piece of technology. It's a ticketing system. It's a data collection system.
They moved it to the phone.
The band reminds me of an NFT. It's a kind of
and that's what it is.
Kind of thing.
In addition to it being your ticket, and you can charge on it, right? They connect it to your room account or to your credit card. It also is, all the rides are aware that you're in the ride, so it personalizes the ride, and it also takes pictures of you when you're on the ride. And then you get your My Disney Experience app. And so every time you go on a ride, like after you get off the ride, it's the picture of you on the ride that shows up in your app.
Right. But that's the consumer experience. But actually at the back end, the amount of data they're getting.
All the food you buy.
These people are buying people are buying subs. These people are buying hot dogs. These people are using this ride. This is how long the queue is at this ride.
Exactly.
This is how many people I need.
Just want to add on that, they are now using that data that they've collected from Magic Bands. If you weren't aware of this, in their new app, they released a new app at the beginning of the year called Genie Plus. And you have to use it. It replaces their Fast Pass system, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I don't want to tout Genie Plus. I really don't like it, but it does have some cool features. Technology-wise, it's cool. But it uses the data that it collects to now predictively tell you, based upon preferences from previous visits or things that you select, where to go, what rides, based upon wait time, your preferences. So all the data that it has collected from Magic Band usage over the last few years, it has taken all that, and now it applies it plus data it collects now in real time with this Genie Plus app, and it will tell guests that are at the park based upon how many people in your party, what your previous preferences are from either what you visited or have done in the past through your My Disney Experience app, or if you're new, it'll ask you questions to gain your preferences, and it'll tell you where to go in the park based upon like when you want to eat, how many people you have, what rides you prefer, and tell you where to go and when to maximize your time and wait times and rides. So they've figured out how to use that data to provide what appears to be a benefit to the guests, right? Which it is, but but
also
Disney
helps them maximize revenue. No, but I'm just thinking, if you've got a ride that's empty and you send someone a message on the app and says, "Oh, by the way," and I'm sure there's ways that you could move this into a more Web3 kind of thinking, where you have a Disney token that says, "Okay, we know you don't really like this ride, but it's empty right now. And if you go there now and ride it, we'll give you 10 Disney tokens."
They could get real creative real fast.
Yeah. Let's talk about cruises for a sec, because I know you've done the Disney cruise thing and
yep, many times.
They're amazing in theme parks, they're amazing content, they're amazing things, but cruises might have seemed like a strange departure, and yet it's worked.
Well, the Disney cruise started as a partnership with the Big Red Boat back in the, late 80s, early 90s. And it was just a partnership with another cruise line. And it was really, really popular for them. And Disney was like, well, why, as Disney always does, it's what I call the Sam Walton principle. Why are we partnering with this cruise line? Why are we partnering with Netflix when we can start our own streaming company? It was the same thing. Why aren't we doing our own cruise line? So they built 2 cruise ships and they launched them out of Florida, out of Port Canaveral. And they're like, let's see how this thing goes. And of course it blew up, and it's amazing. And why people like it is it's not cheap. It's expensive. The rooms are bigger. There's more cast members on the ship than there are guests. So the ships aren't overcrowded. They're very family friendly, right? So the reason that there's more cast members on the ships than there are guests is it's very focused on families. So as an example, I've been on. It goes
back to experience and storytelling at the end of the day.
So they have 2 decks on most every ship. Some decks there's more, on some ships there's more that are just for kids. So like when my kids were young, like you go and you take your kids and you drop them off and you never see them again for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days because they don't ever want to come back. Right. And they put like a RFID band on them, and then you get one too, and they can't leave. Like if they leave, the band goes off, but they're constantly supervised. And it's like they have the Avengers campus on the ship, and it's insane, the theming. It's just like the parks. And then they bring the kids back and you have dinner together every night, and all the restaurants are themed. It's just like very, very Disney. And it's just like, imagine the theme park on a ship.
If Disney can make cruises work, can they make residential housing work?
Well, here's the difference. Disney owns the cruise line.
Right.
Disney does not own the residential community. So here's why. So I want to preface this by saying, as Dave has alluded to many times, I'm a huge Disney nerd. I used to work for the company, and I'm a Disney nerd. My wife is. We go like 4 or 5. This steams my biscuits so much. I really, somebody who has a romantic attachment to Disney for many years, I really dislike, and that's not strong enough word. I'll be nice though. Don't like Bob Chapek. He's the current CEO of Disney. I think he's, I would characterize him as the worst CEO since Michael Eisner, who I also despise. He's all about he's a shill, shareholder value, doesn't care about the brand, it doesn't stand for Walt's principles. I don't want to sound like romantic.
Comes back to this downfall documentary about Boeing, right? That they were
I
always
think it's
this amazing,
very good point. Yes,
amazing company where quality and pilots and whatever else was a thing, and then suddenly there was a a leadership team, an executive team that decided that share price is more important than planes falling.
100%.
So.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about. To kind of get back to the topic, Disney came out, made this huge announcement. We're building this really great. Now you can live at Disney in the Palm Springs Desert in the Coachella Valley, and it's called Cotino, and it's a Disney community. Yeah, but if you read the fine print, Disney does not own it. Disney is not building it. Disney's Imagineering isn't even designing it. It's some builder building some cookie cutter homes out in the Palm Springs Desert, and Disney is licensing their name to it. And there's going to be some Disney cast members manning the stores and the restaurants in it. That's it. Wow. So it's Disney just licensing their name to slap it on some community. Like, how cheap is that? Yeah. So like, that's where we've gotten to. And then that's on the heels of Bob Chapek also announcing in the last month or so that Disney's going to get involved in sports betting. Yeah. Like, are these things on brand for Disney? I want you to think about this brand, all the things that we talked about before: ABC, National Geographic, Marvel, Star Wars, all this IP, like Bob Iger. And again, I'm not like idolizing Bob Iger. I just think he was a good CEO, has spent 15 years building Disney into arguably the largest media conglomerate in the business.
Yeah, ABC, and I think he did some really
big deals,
strategic deals as well. Because
very strategic.
Because how do you protect yourself against Netflix? Well, you buy up IP, you buy up things that people love, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Marvel.
He bought Fox.
Fox. The library.
Right. Bob Iger did some tremendous work at the helm of Disney to build this castle around Disney, not to use a metaphor, to set Disney up for the future, right? With all of this IP,
totally,
and kind of position with Disney Plus to shield them to go into the future strong,
right?
And I think it set an expectation in the market that because of course Disney has just made money hand over fist. Disney already has a community that they've built and they own it, and it's on Disney property.
Exactly.
It's called Golden Oak in Florida.
Okay.
And they own it, wholesale own it. They own the property, they build the houses. It's all, and they control it.
Right.
And that I'm fine with that as long as Disney controls it, because they control the quality.
What do you stand for? What is your customer promise? And Disney has got a really strong customer proposition and customer promise. It's it's got family values. It's fun. It's magical. It's escapism.
I would say that's the entirety of the brand.
But a lot of these theme parks in the rest of the world are all VR. Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi, half the rides are VR rides. So you sit in a moving chair and you put on a VR headset and you watch a film. That's the ride. Now, you don't need to go to Abu Dhabi Ferrari World to do that in a Metaverse Czar world. You can just buy a chair that moves, put on a VR headset, and experience exactly the same ride at home. So, unless it's a roller coaster or something that's super, super interesting and super cool, or you own the IP for it, it's going to be interesting times. We'll see how we go.
I think virtual theme parks are coming. Brick and mortar or Web 2 based business models versus metaverse business models. Remember, in the brick and mortar world of theme park Disney business models, they make a majority of their money at the theme parks in merchandise and food.
Right. F&B and accommodation and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, and hotels and resorts and stuff. How do they pivot from that? I don't know yet.
I'm open for Metaverse Czar roles. I'm quite happy to be I'm quite happy to be a Metaverse Czar.
You can find his resume available on our website.
Exactly. We will be back in just a moment. The Pilote podcast is all about disruption. We're always looking for people to join the conversation. It can be disruption in any market or industry, so get in touch via the links on this page if you're listening on the website, or via the show notes in your favorite podcast app. Now back to the show. Over to you.
What the hell is Starlight Coke? I don't know if you've seen it.
You sent me the
Starlight Coke.
You sent me the picture of it.
It's advertised as experience a subtle cooling sensation as you enjoy the reddish Starlight beverage with a new but familiar great Coca Cola taste. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Brought to you by Coca Cola Creations. Does Coca Cola have nothing better to do?
I'm slightly less averse to this idea than you are. I think that
I'm not averse to it. It just cracks me up that, like, I've said this many times because Coca Cola is based here in Atlanta, and I've worked with them many times.
And I'm a Coke guy. I'm a Coke guy, not a Pepsi guy. I'll put that on my T-shirt. I would rather drink
my best
Coke
friend
than
is
Pepsi.
too.
Can you? It must be really hard to be a Coke brand manager.
100%.
These guys have been selling sweet fizzy liquid for 50 years, and there's nothing they can really do to change the paradigm of you can drink our sweet fizzy liquid or someone else's fizzy liquid, and it's either whatever.
Well, what do you do when you're Coke? This is my point.
Exactly. It's hard.
It's like the most recognized brand in the world. Hey, here's your marketing budget. What do you spend it on?
Right.
Like they could stop marketing tomorrow. I don't know that it would even hurt the revenue.
The personalization thing worked well. I like that. You know, the thing where it was like you buy the bottle or the can with your name on it. That was pretty cool.
But like, think about if you're like the R&D guy at Coke.
Right.
They're just like, think of something.
But they've tried that before, right? They tried New Coke and it failed.
Right. And they're like, that guy, get rid of that guy.
And then they needed Classic Coke, and then they pivoted back to Classic Coke because nobody liked the taste of New Coke.
Have you heard the theory of like that was Coca-Cola switching from cane sugar to corn syrup sugar, and it was like a big thing? There's a conspiracy theory.
I can imagine that.
Right.
Again,
and they were like,
it comes back to the experience, right? At the end of the day, they say, okay, you got two things. One is Coke. It comes in a can, comes in a bottle. The bottle is iconic shape. It's been the same for 100 years. People buy into that and say, right, I love the bottle. I love the thing. I'm a rebel. Bruce Springsteen versus the guy with a monkey.
Oh, Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Who was a
guy with a monkey. And I knew who it was.
Michael Jackson,
like Ronald Reagan,
but he was a Pepsi guy, right? So you've got Michael Jackson is a Pepsi guy, and Bruce Springsteen is a Coke guy. I don't know how it works. You know, it's like political parties, but it's got to be hard as a brand manager for Coke.
There was like they had an orange Coke here for a while that had orange flavor in it, and then they had another flavor of Coke, and I don't remember what flavor it was, but it was green. It was in a green can.
Well, I think that's the one with less sugar, which is their bigger problem. So they're being accused by a whole bunch of people that they're causing obesity and diabetes and millions of people.
Then stop drinking Coke.
I like the taste of Coke. You know, occasionally I love a Coke.
I don't drink a lot of soda either because, like you said, it's bad for you. I'm a fat bastard, and I've worked on losing weight for a while. And so, like, that's a thing that I cut out. I occasionally have one. I like the taste of it with certain foods, and I'll have one. But I'm just like, at my age, I just need to have some self-control. So I just don't drink it.
But I think they've got bigger problems. So why don't they deal with the sugar problem rather than saying, oh, we're going to launch Starlight Coke?
After 100 whatever years of producing Coke, and we don't have to answer this question. It's not our job. Is it Coke's responsibility? Is it a corporate responsibility to be like, okay, you're responsible for the obesity problem? Or is it like, again, I'm not a weirdo conservative or anything. I'm just like, is it their responsibility? Or is it just, hey, don't drink so much Coke? I don't know.
I think there is a certain part which is their responsibility.
We hold cigarette companies accountable for cancer. It's the same thing.
And actually in the news this week, I mean, Remington got done on a lawsuit this week in the US, brought under state law from Sandy Hook, where basically they said that they shouldn't have been marketing their guns in the way that they've been marketing.
Oh, that lawsuit settled. I didn't see that.
Yeah, they lost.
Hey, let's take a listener question.
Please accord. Is there a question anywhere in our future? Can you explain that?
Thank you for all your listener questions. We can't get to them all. You know what we're going to have to do, Cory? We're going to have to do a live event. I think we should do a live event where people ask their questions, and we'll put that on the list because we've had some really
we promise to be on our best behavior as long as Bob Chapek doesn't call in.
Well, he could be a special guest. How can executives keep up with everything that is happening in blockchain and Web3?
Good question. Listen to this podcast.
I think that is a fantastic answer. That's the best answer we're going to give.
That's a good answer. There's just a lot of noise.
Right.
So it's hard to cut through the noise. It's not that the information is not available. It's that the information in the news is out there. It's just hard to determine what is. I just posted something on LinkedIn today that was like, yeah, this is a great article if you believe in fantasy. It's just a lot of noise. You know what I mean?
So I'm a massive fan of reverse mentoring. You know, you've got guys and women who are in leadership positions who can learn from people who've just come out of university or who are, you know, at the start of their careers, and they can learn from each other. The people who literally just entered the organization can learn from leadership team, and the leadership team can learn from the people who've just come out of whatever institution it is and just joined the company. They've got different skill sets. There's a different generational understanding. It requires a little bit of humility on both sides. It needs to, you need to put your ego in. If you're an executive and you're in a C-level position, you need to put your ego aside for a little bit and say, okay, I don't know everything. Yes, I have got to a position of leadership in the country and in the company, and that is because of time and experience and results. But there's things that have happened in the last 12 months, 14 months, 2 years that I've got absolutely no idea about because they're new technology. And there are people in my organization who've been hired in the last 6 months, 12 months who know this stuff. So why not invite those people into my office?
I do that often too. Like, I'm a practical learner. I have to touch it. That sounds dirty. You know what I mean? I have to get in there and actually do a thing sometimes to learn it or to understand it. And I think that's a really good way to do it. And, some of these things cost a little bit of money, but it's a small investment in learning, really.
Right.
Buy an NFT or mint an NFT or buy some land.
Which I think a lot of people should do. Anyone who is posting on LinkedIn or whatever and giving advice and saying, oh, this is going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. Have you logged into one of these platforms in the last 7 days? Have you ever created a personal wallet? Do you know what gas fees are? Do you know what the difference between an Ethereum NFT and a Solana NFT is? Why are you buying the NFT? Are you doing it to support an artist? Are you doing it to be part of a decentralized autonomous organization? Do you want to be part of a community? It might cost you a couple of $100. One Solana, which I think at the moment is about $92, it might cost you 0.5 Ethereum, which is a lot more. Create an avatar. If you're talking about the metaverse and you haven't created an avatar and you don't know the difference between an interoperable avatar and a non-interoperable avatar, then how can you
have an opinion?
How can you have an opinion, right?
Right. Your opinion is moot.
Have you bought land in one of these places? Do you know how much that costs? Get the skin in the game, I think, is what I'm saying.
100%. Like they say in the Matrix, there's a big difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that claim to know the path.
Talking the talk versus walking the walk.
Right. But it's a big difference getting out there and doing it. And I think that I'm going to have to agree with you. I think that's the best. That's the thing you should do. And I think that will also separate people and help them understand is the metaverse something that really, to put a fine point on it, that I should be paying attention to now or not. Like touching it, experiencing it will help you understand where the metaverse or Web3 is at today in its maturity and whether or not it's something that you should be involved or pay attention to or not.
And you're absolutely right. Who do you believe? Who do you trust? I think it's changed even in the last few weeks since we've been doing this podcast. Cool heads in the space who are starting to come out and say, just let's put the brakes on slightly. And if it sounds like a scam, it probably is a scam.
Like we're in the Napster era. We've not quite reached the iTunes era. Right. Well, this has been a good chat today. We've wrapped it all up in a bow. We started with experience, and I think there's more to explore here. But before we go, I'd like to say if Bob Chapek, if you're out there listening, or Josh D'Amato, the head of Disney Parks and Experience, we want you on this podcast if you want to be a guest.
We want the new Metaverse Czar on the podcast, I think.
Or the new Metaverse Czar. Absolutely. I'd love to talk to him. Please reach out to us. I promise I'll be nice.
Thank you, Cory Smith, for another insightful episode. We look forward to seeing you next week.